I think the real question is what happens, what if a Democratic president or Democratic candidate wins in 2028 and has all of these huge powers? And that's one reason why, so many people in the conservative movement, including the Heritage Foundation, have for a long time, argued against a president who's too strong. In this case, they threw that all out, and I think it could definitely come back to bite them.
Yeah, but it also speaks to the fact that perhaps they don't expect to ever lose again. I'm thinking about the comedian Paul, can't remember his last name, but he has great quotes. Paul Rooney, I think that's it. Mooney, Paul Mooney, is that? Yeah. And he said, talking about race in America, and he said, I read the White Book. Us getting away was never a chapter. Right. And so I think about that. They plan, but they don't plan, if you know what I mean. And so it's a little nerve-wracking, a little scary to be a Black person in America or outside of America like I am right now watching, because Project 2025, above all else, is racist as hell. How racist is it, David?
Well, it does the thing where they're often not explicit about it. It hides just a little bit under the surface. So, they talk a lot about these values, and the values are very much a very, white Christian traditional kind of vision of that. They very much want to close the borders of the U.S. And not only to close the borders, it's not just about illegal immigration. It's about pushing out people who are already in the country illegally and legally. So, there's this effort to, for example, to denaturalize people, to get people who have valid visas and to take away their visas and get them to leave, because you're trying to create the sort of demographic balance that you want inside the country. You want to withdraw a lot of social benefits, for example. So there's all these ways that race plays into it that are not quite stated. And I think they would say, well, look, we want these things for everyone. But I think you don't have to look very far into the text to understand the subtext.
Oh, no. Yeah. The subtext is very clear to me. And I apologize, everybody. Paul Mooney. I saw somebody in the chat. I think it was Deirdre. I'm not going to lie, guys. I'm in menopause and my brain doesn't work sometimes. I have to take so many supplements. And I know Project 2025 also hates women. How much does it hate women, David?
It's rough. This is very much like women should be in the home raising children. It is. I think one of the interesting tensions you get in the MAGA movement is there are a lot of women in positions of power. That is not really the case in Project 2025. There are a few women involved, but this is a really male-dominated project. It's very much about women out of the workplace, men as breadwinners, and that involves things like it obviously there's a lot of push back on abortion, attempts to ban abortion or to restrict it if you can't do that. But it also comes to these very basic way of life questions, who can work, who can't work. I think that, again, that pulses throughout the whole project.
And Mike, you're a dad of daughters, and it feels like this is something, and I know Democrats definitely tried to push it, but do you feel that the future that your daughters are facing is a future that makes any kind of sense at all in this sort of Christian nationalist hellscape?
No, I am convinced that currently, not even in the future, currently women in this country are second-class citizens because they no longer have autonomy over their own bodies. And so, anytime that these decisions can be made by politicians about, their own medical care, I think that they have already lost, equal playing or equal footing with cisgendered white Christian men, who I think, it's pretty clear to me just from what I've seen in Project 2025 and the way that it has been implemented and by whom it was implemented, that's the intended dominant species, so to speak, that they want running this country and representing this country.
Yeah, I think there's a whole sort of anti-libertarian streak in a lot of this. It's like taking away bodily autonomy. It is, pushing things like gender discrimination complaints are de-emphasized in favor of, bogus election fraud or anti-Christian discrimination complaints. There's a push to dismantle the sort of civil rights establishment, all of the civil rights legislation we have, all the protections that exist in the law. They talked about being against woke, against DEI, but what they're doing is well beyond that, pushing into the sort of bedrock 60s civil rights stuff. And there's another quote. I mean, Kevin Roberts is a fount of these things, but he writes in the project something like, freedom is the liberty to do as we ought, not as we ought, not as we want. And that doesn't sound like liberty to me. I mean, I don't think that's the way most Americans on right or left think about liberty, but it's very much, it's a big government approach. They want to tell you how to live.
Is it?
Go ahead, Mike.
Every time I hear that, it amazes me how, the party of limited government and the party of get out of my home, get out of my yard, I'm going to chase you away with my guns, has now become the party of daddy, tell me what to do. I'm scared. Please help me. And that's it. I'll never get over that. But it seems as though the underlining, takeaway from Project 2025 and from, its purpose.
Yeah.
So real time now, we're dealing with a Ebola outbreak in Africa, and Project 2025 had all sorts of plans for the CDC, for USAID. Can you talk about how it's going to perhaps impact our health? Because it seems like they want a bunch of us to die.
Yeah, I mean, there's this idea in there that, I guess, a couple ideas. One is the idea that what we do overseas doesn't affect us. And so a kind of the idea that giving aid to foreign countries was just charity. And what we see is that, having disease prevention overseas, in fact, can be very good protection for Americans. It keeps us safe at home. There's also a real antipathy to the CDC and to a lot of the public health establishment. And I think comes from a couple things. One is, the sort of RFK, MAHA, anti-vaccine thing. But there's also a real fury about COVID. There's a real anger about COVID vaccine mandates, a real anger about shutdowns from COVID, and a sense that what needs to be done is to really put the public health establishment back in its place, and to shrink it, to give it less power. And I went through those lockdowns too, and they were unpleasant, and I understand where people are coming from, but we can see really clearly right now, when you don't take care of public health, when you don't have prevention, when you don't have science on its side, you put yourself in danger of more outbreaks like that, not of making things better.